Hello all you lovely cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic and today we're going to be taking a review look at Fortnite. The game is currently in early access and I wanted to basically review the content that's in the game as it currently stands, tell you a little bit about what Fortnite is all about, and of course give you a verdict on it. Now, Fortnite is described as a co-op sandbox survival game. It's essentially been talked about and described by Tim Sweeney, the founder of Epic Games, because that's who developed the title, as a kind of Minecraft meets Left 4 Dead. In truth, that's not accurate. I would describe this as a zombie Orcs Must Die. And it is very much Orcs Must Die. It is very much the third-person tower defense horde mode gameplay mixed with the building and placement of Orcs Must Die, but it's all been amped up and deepened to a more multiplayer and larger variety. So Fortnite places you in the role of the commander of a group of survivors. Basically, the world is under attack by a giant purple cloud, and from that cloud spawns numerous zombie-like creatures. And essentially, you must go through a story-driven campaign that is not solo. You can solo the campaign, but it's also multiplayer. And you can go through this story-driven campaign that's all voice-acted. It's actually a pretty interesting storyline. There's a lot of humor embedded throughout the game, which is enjoyable. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but still tries to retain some semblance of drama here and there. And you go through the story campaign, and your entire idea is to basically survive in this, invasion of these zombie-like creatures, as well as search for survivors, build up your defensive, actively fight back and push the cloud away, and of course find out what happened to the majority of the Earth's populace because they all disappeared as the cloud arrived. The core of Fortnite's gameplay revolves around third-person fighting. It basically, whether you're doing a solo mission or you're in multiplayer, it is third-person combat. You can shoot, you can melee, and you can build, and it's all about usually objective-based gameplay. So whatever mission you're on, the objective will be slightly different. So it might be to hold off the forces until a certain time period, or it might be to collect a certain number of things, but they're always likely, regardless of the objective, is always levels mostly end with some kind of horde mode defense, and allowing you to build up defenses, build traps, and take on the waves and waves of enemies. Usually the objectives do change, but it always ends up the same. The combat itself works very well. I like the multitude of heroes that you get to play as. You can switch out your heroes at any time before or after a match, and you can use, each hero has their own class, their own abilities, they have their own proficiencies with weapons. I preferred the ninja class so that I was able to wield swords and do abilities that revolved around creating massive amounts of melee damage. There's a lot of fun to be had in Fortnite. The class system works very well, and then on top of the class system, you also have a survivor squad system whereby you have squads of survivors for different things. You will get survivors from loot packs or just from finding them in the world, and then you are able to use those survivors to essentially buff your hero in certain aspects and also buff your party. There are multiple progression systems within Fortnite. You have the Survivor Squad system, then you have Expedition Squads where you can send out heroes and survivors to search for resources and materials that you can use to craft. You have progression with a research and technology tree, so you can research things like, which will give you statistical bonuses to your party and yourself. And then you also have a skill and ability system whereby you unlock new abilities and skills that will allow you to access more content, such as allowing you to progress to level 2 of the ninja class, for example. Now, heroes themselves also have progressions, as do items. So whether it's an item schematic or a hero or a survivor, you will gain relevant XP for each, and you'll be able to use that XP to level those things up. And they also have tiers of basically stars that you can proficiency. So for example, once you've leveled up to I think it's level 20 or something like 21 of the base ninja, then you can go into your research and development tree, unlock the ability to go up to star level 2, and then you can start leveling that character over again and make them even stronger. So there's a multiple ways of progressing in Fortnite. There's multiple things going on, and there's actually so much that it can take a while for you to really get to grips with the game. The good thing is about Fortnite, however, when it comes to that, is the fact that the new user experience in Fortnite is actually very well done. The tutorial lasts a hell of a long time, but it's all story-driven, single-player content for the most part, that it doesn't feel too bogged down. It feels like you are progressing, but that tutorial will last a hell of a long time. Now, like I said, the combat is good. The core gameplay loop is actually fairly rewarding and fun. Matches don't tend to last too long, maybe 15 to 25 minutes each, and it's a kind of game that, you know, you jump in and you can play for an hour, half an hour, whatever you want, get rewards from loot packs and from questing, and then jump out. And it's very much designed around shorter gameplay experiences. You can also, you know, tough it out and go on and on and on for a long session. That's absolutely fine, but it's nice that the game doesn't pressure you into making a huge time commitment, and that really does help the multiplayer in the sense that, you know, you can go and have a really fantastic multiplayer experience in Fortnite without having to commit too long of a time frame. The multiplayer itself works very well. I had no connectivity issues whatsoever, and I think that actually it's probably one of the most strongest points of Fortnite. I think as a single player experience, especially in the missions that you can do solo, it is a bit of a problem. There is just a lack of anything interesting within the game itself without playing with random people or friends. And I think that it's very much designed around, you know, being a game that is a hell of a lot of fun with people, but as a solo experience, it really lacks that engagement and longevity that you would seek to find in a solo experience. And I think that the core of the game itself is very much structured around drop-in, drop-out multiplayer. And I think without that experience, the core gameplay itself, including the combat, including the progression, including the fun factor of the title itself, it just falls short without that ideal in mind. I think if you don't like those experiences, you don't like games like Orcs Must Die, then you're going to really struggle to get into Fortnite regardless of how you feel. Crafting itself is another integral part of the game. Crafting is pretty much used for everything from building forts and defenses, to building traps, to building weapons and armors. And it's something that's really important to bear in mind with Fortnite, because weapons are going to have durability, and especially more rare items are going to go down and eventually they're going to be destroyed, and it's something that you're going to have to go out into the world, go out into a lot of missions and find various rare materials as well as common ones. And so there is also the grind factor within that itself. And now comes the business model. Fortnite is a free-to-play game. Obviously, if you want in early access, you have to pay for it, but other than that, it's going to be a free-to-play game, which on one hand is absolutely fine because there's plenty of content that is, you know, it's a really well-polished, well thought out, fluid free-to-play game. It's high quality, and there's no doubt about that. The problem is that the microtransaction business model is not pay to win in any means of the imagination, because ultimately it's not a competitive game. It is a co-op game, so it's not pay to win, but it is very much a case of when you get further on in the game and you get to kind of the middle game content towards the end game content, what's currently in there, you're going to have a hell of a grind for basically anything. And you're going to hit points where you're going to have to consistently go out on missions and repeat the same content over and over again in order to get the resources, XP, and various other items you need in order to progress to a decent level. Whereas you can just pay for in-game currency, buy llama packs, and just get all that really, really quickly. It's also a problem when, you know, it gives paid players an advantage over finding rare schematics as well. Not that that's a negative thing, because it doesn't really affect other players, but it is very difficult to find a rare schematic out in the world versus just getting it from a loot llama. On the bright side, loot llamas do come very regularly for free players so far from what I've seen, but again, once you get to that middle game to late game content, what's currently in the early access, you're going to struggle to progress at a fairly fast pace compared to what the first few hours were like. Overall, I think Fortnite is a top-notch free-to-play game. It is very fluid, it's a lot of fun on multiplayer. I think the problem that I have with it most of all isn't the business model, it isn't the style of gameplay. The problem is I just don't think it has enough longevity. And I think that what they've tried to do is put in and pack in as much progression as possible, but the progression itself feels empty. You know, you can get all these survivors, but they're just cards. They're just 2D portraits. They don't do anything. It's not like you have, you know, a State of Decay style base of operations. You don't really get that. You do have a kind of base of operations, but it's devoid of life and pretty much pointless. And it's something that is a little bit of a letdown for the game. There's plenty, you know, if you enjoy, you know, Orcs Must Die, you enjoy, you know, wave horde games, and you enjoy crafting, and you enjoy playing with people and shooting down waves and waves of zombie-like creatures, then this is absolutely perfect for you. Other than that, though, I think if you're looking for something with a bit of meat to it that you can play for a hell of a long time, I don't think Fortnite's going to cure that itch particularly. I think that it is a game that will ultimately do very, very well regardless, but I think at a certain point there's just going to be such repetitive gameplay loops, a lack of progression that is meaningful, and ultimately it's going to get stale fairly quickly. And that is my review of Fortnite. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, and as always, I will see you next time.